In the last video, we went over the 5-6 trap in Trey Open Offset, possibly the best run play in the entire game. In this video, we'll go over a little mini scheme that you can work off of it. The formation is in the Eagles, Panthers, and spread playbooks, and honestly, you can do a lot of good just running this formation alone. Of course, these playbooks have a plethora of other really good formations, but if you want an introduction to them, this is a terrific place to start, as it really has answers for everything that you'll see on the defensive side of the ball, and doesn't really require any complex reads or adjustments. What I suggest is that you use the 4 wide receiver package right here, but other than that, how you call the plays and set up your audibles is obviously up to you. Before we get into the rest of the scheme though, let's recap the 5-6 trap for those that didn't see the last video. So really quick, why the 5-6 trap is so great is because you are trapping the play side defensive end, which is this guy right here. This is just a cover 2 look at a dollar. Dollar seems to be pretty popular right now, especially the cover 1-1. And then obviously if you're coming up in 4 wide receivers, you're going to see a lot of these dime and dollar sets. What's good about trapping the play side defensive end is that rather than blocking him with your tackle or your tight end, where you might see a block shed or a reach tackle or something like that, you are essentially ignoring him with your play side blockers, and then you have a backside guard coming just to kick him out of the play. So he's always pretty much going to be a non-factor. And the other thing that's good about it is allows your tackle and potentially your guard to immediately work up to the second level to get to those linebackers, or potentially, if there's no linebacker there, to work their way to the safety as well. Whereas, if you're running inside zone, sometimes your blockers have a little bit of difficulties getting off their double teams and reaching to the second level. So this one has, huge potential to, if not bare minimum, get 5 to 10 yards, but it also has huge potential to get much more than that as well. So in that case, I ran into my blocker, but still got 8-9 yards. So this is going to be great against most defensive fronts and defensive coverages. There are some that are kind of bizarre that make it a little bit tricky, but by and large, you're going to be really successful against most of those. If you have an open B gap to the backside, you also have the counter play, which is also really nice. It's essentially the exact same play as the 5-6 trap in that the left tackle is not blocking the end over there. He's immediately going to the second level, and you have the backside guard coming to push him out of the way. Now the handoff's a little bit worse. The path that the running back takes is a little bit tricky to take control, but again, it's just going to be the same thing. As long as you have no congestion in the B gap there, it'll be easy for you to just get inside that end, and that tackle's taking that linebacker out of the play and is potentially a big play for you. But despite having much fewer defenders over there, I still don't think counter's nearly as good as the 5-6 trap, because sometimes that defensive end to that side is able to make kind of a nice aggressive play inside and can stuff you in the backfield. But it does have a big potential to pop for much, much larger. Inside zone is always going to be great for you, 5 yards or so. But these trap and counter plays where you have these pulling guards, you have these tackles climbing immediately to the second level, have a lot of potential for some big plays. So that's really, really nice. If you do see, weird adjustments, like say if they're pinching their line and now both B gaps are closed and it makes it more difficult to run those. So say if I run the 5-6 trap again, there's nobody to really trap, and then it essentially just becomes another power play. It ended up being okay, we got 4 yards, but that's not really ideal. So this isn't something you see all the time, but if it's something you see, you do have the option to have an outside zone as well. So an outside zone, the block is going to be working a little bit better because you don't have those pullers, and you can get a few more consistent yards off of that. So just to recap here a little bit, even though it is 10 personnel, 4 wide receivers, I do consider this to be a run-first formation where your 5-6 trap is really going to be your bread and butter. You're going to be using it almost against everything. If you do see an over-rotation of the defense to the strong side, and you do see an opening of the B gap to the backside, like I showed you, you do have the counter option. And again, the aiming point is just inside that defensive end. Assuming he doesn't blow you up in the backfield, which is kind of a rare, you should be able to pop off for a pretty big gain. So again, pretty much the same thing as the 5-6 trap, aiming inside that defensive end, and those trappers and pullers should help you get a long way. And if you do see weird things, you do have the option of the outside zone, which is a little bit more of a more consistent blocking scheme. You're not going to pop off for a big gain, but it's going to be better against those pinched fronts and stuff like that. And then you'll also come back with an RPO inside zone that we can work off of that as well. But before we get to that, you also have the option of the halfback slip screen. The first video I made, I showed you guys how great the slip screen can be. Not so much against man, obviously, because you have a man defender that could come down on the running back. But you know, with that being said, you can still do pretty good with the slip screen against man, especially against the cover zero blitz. But by and large, this is going to be more so something for zone coverage. So you see the halfback gets out nicely. You got at least 2 blockers right here, can take these guys out of the play. That blocker actually took an extra guy to the play, and you should be able to get 5, 10, 15, 20 yards off of this. And before we get into the passing plays, which I think have a number of really interesting things with them, let's just quickly go over this RPO with the backside slant and the smoke screen to the front, because it does offer a number of nice things. So what I like to do, really against anything, man or zone, it doesn't really matter. Man, in this case, if you're playing cover 1 robber or whatever, they're usually shading up. So this slant gets open actually against almost everything, namely because the corner doesn't do a good job against slants, and usually the inside linebacker here, or the overhang guy, doesn't really do a good job against that because it is an RPO. He's playing kind of the run, and usually you can find a pretty nice pocket there to catch that and get at the bare minimum 5 to 10 yards. And sometimes, of course, you can break that for larger, particularly if it's a cover 0. You have no help. Potentially, all the defensive backs are over to the 3 wide receiver side, and you should have a lot of room for you. But against man, in this case, even cover 1, you had that space. Even against a zone look, you should have a lot of space. But also, if they're, say, pass committing or something like that, and then you do have guys are undercutting. This guy probably won't be because he's manned up on the running back. If it's not open, and this is something, of course, you want to practice, you can always just hand it off, and you should be able to, it's your last option, getting you 5 to 6 to 7 yards. So a really solid option to the backside, again, if you find your opponent over rotating to defend against that 5-6 trap. Say if they're using this guy over here to add another guy front side, you're just only going to have more room for that backside slant. Some things I should mention about the screen to the strong side here is that it's not actually that great unless we get a patch with how these RPO blockers work. But in this case here, it's pretty much 3 against 2. I'm just running a cover 3 here, but usually the blockers kind of miss, and it's difficult for you to get yards off of that. So really the only place I would use it is if it's zone baseline and you really have a numbers advantage over there. That's the only time I would use this. But you do see it quite often because again, that 5-6 trap and that counter is so good that people do tend to try to stack the blocks, and then you do have that screen out there. That screen could be so much better, but the blocking is a little bit wonky on that. So again, I really only throw that when it's baseline and the numbers are really there. Otherwise, that slant is always going to be good, and then the handoff off of that, if you don't see an opening there, can usually be pretty consistent. Okay, the first passing play is FL Dig, which has a number of really good options. You don't actually have to make any adjustments here. It's ready to go. So you can quick snap the guys. They can't do all their adjustments. It's really, really nice to come into. So just on defense here, I'm not going to go into every coverage. I think cover 4, is a pretty standard zone. You got flat defenders, hook defenders, deep zones, and everything. Most of this stuff is just going to apply to every single spot drop zone coverages. You have a high-low to the right, you have a high-low to the left, and you also have this seam route, which is potentially really, really good, as you'll see. So you have a number of options to the right side right here. You have the dig, which unless they're playing with their zone drops, that's always going to be open there behind the linebackers. But you also have a check down here. If for whatever that reason that's not open, you also have this little hitch here. You can get 6 yards. So that's an easy high-low that, in my opinion, can't be guarded with spot drop coverage. You'll need some sort of match coverage or man coverage, or zone with a user coming into the play there. But as soon as we take the user out of the middle of the field, we have so much more to work with. On the left side here, we have another easy high-low. This out route from the running back is really, really nice. Catch that upfield. If they're not running hard flats, we should be able to get at least 10 yards off of that. But if they are running hard flats, to potentially take that away, this wide receiver corner route, or this C route, is actually really nice. Just throw a little low ball right here, and in that case we didn't catch it. But if we actually press the right buttons, we should be able to catch that for our 15 yards. So you got 2 great high-low reads to the left and to the right, and then you also have this really nice seam route that's actually a coverage beater against a wide number of coverages. Again, because this is the 4 wide receiver package, he's going to be a receiver rather than tight end, so you can get some sneaky speed here to get over the top. Watson isn't the greatest guy to be showing this with, but if you have your fastest guy, whatever that is, Tyreek Hill, your Ruggs, put him there because he's going to give you potential to take it over the top, especially once you're hitting them with these really good run plays in screens and RPOs. It's going to open this up a lot more. So it's going to be able to get over the top of pretty much any coverage, even cover 4 drop, where he gets inside the strong safety and behind the backside safety. It's a little bit tricky here because, again, Watson's kind of slow and the dollar safeties are really, really far back. But if it's against a regular cover 4, like a quarters or a 3-4 cover 4 drop, those guys are a little bit lower. Or if they're pressing at a dollar, he's going to be coming down a little bit lower. And you'll see here, again, inside this guy, behind the other guy. And if you can, possession catch that or rack catch that, you can get that big yardage. So this one isn't, as guaranteed as your right and left high lows, but it's always going to be an option for you. Again, if you have that speed there, even if you don't, like Watson's okay. You see I was able to get over the top. Even better though against cover 2. So you see right here, just a regular cover 2 with the mid read there. You see that we're able to split the safeties perfectly right here, and so we can, just forward pass lead, easy 1-play score. Or, and here's what's really cool. So I go back to cover 2 drop, and everybody puts their Mike linebacker in a deep third right here, but because you have speed right here and because nobody's bumping him off the line, you can actually beat this guy over the top. So just like that, because those linebackers don't have the speed that you can get between those safeties. So against cover 2, it's almost a guaranteed 1-play score, which is nice. Cover 3, you have another couple of interesting options right here. Unless you're coming up against some formation that only has 1 deep safety, like a 46 or something like that, cover 3 is going to line up with 2 deep safeties right here. What you're going to do is look at where the deep safety is. So if he's to the right here, we're actually going to be able to hit him inside for a decent chunk of yardage right here. So we see how the safeties rotate, and we can actually throw it inside right here and get a little bit of body positioning and potentially have a 1-play score there. Or, and let me just flip this right here, if the deep safety is coming from the backside right here, we won't be able to get that body positioning, but we can hit the seam, of course. So right here, once he clears the linebacker, we just possession catch that and get our big chunk of yards. So this is one of those annoying routes that your opponent is really going to have to commit to defending, or something to keep in your back pocket if they really start to overcommit. What's also nice is if you do catch them in nickel, because you are 10 personnel, nickel, if they're running man coverage, is not going to be able to match up to this. So if they are, say, running cover 2 man out of a nickel front, well, now you have a linebacker on potentially your fastest guy. And then, unless it's a single, cover 1 type of deal, you're going to have a nice 1-play score opportunity right here because, again, you burn past the linebacker and you're able to split those safeties. So that's, the play that you're really going to be using if you're coming up against, by the most part, zone coverage. This Y corner play is a really nice option against these heavy man runners because you have a number of really good options here. Unfortunately, the plays don't really overlap too well. Like against zone, this play isn't really great, and vice versa, the other one isn't great against man. So it's really kind of something that you have to run against things that you are confident are man or confident are zone. But you have a number of options here. The in routes aren't really great. They're good if you have the matchup win, essentially. Like if you're coming up against on this side over here where you have a cornerback with 1 step ahead, you're going to get locked down. But if you have a slot apprentice or the route technician or whatever against regular corners, these guys are going to get open just fine. So those are going to be options that you want to look out for, but they're not really that exciting. The corner route over here should get open against pretty much anything right here. You get that outside release, you throw it on the break. Even if it's a really poor receiver like this guy, you can get that separation. Now, fortunately, if you're coming up against these guys that run the cover 1 robber press stuff, usually these safeties or something is going to be in a flat route right here, so you can't really throw that corner. And they're usually shading over the top, so you can't beat these guys off the press and over the top. But, something you do want to watch out for is that if you do put your fastest wide receiver right here, and this is potentially the 4th worst corner on their roster, you could have a speed advantage there. And because, you know, a lot of the time people are running without the deep safeties, they're coming down in the flats, you can potentially burn them over the top. So watch out for that. If you have Tyreek, definitely put him in that position. Then on the left side, we have a number of decent options right here. So especially if they're doing this sort of thing where you don't have anybody in the middle of the field, this running back, halfback option route is always going to win, right? It gets in a little bit of congestion right there, but if you can have a little bit of patience. So if we have a little bit of patience, and this is really hard to track with a user, by the way, you see he just completely torches that linebacker and you're able to get a big chunk of yards. Or, you know, if you want to mix it up a little bit, you can put him on a hot route halfback option. He doesn't get, you know, upfield and he doesn't get as big of separation, but especially if you're up against a user, it's nice to change it up, whether he's going to go left or whether he's going to go right. The cool thing about this route also is that if you come across something like this, you know, where the people that would normally be blitzing or spying and man coverage on the running back are put into flats on either side, well, now the option's smart enough, is smart enough to know that it's not man coverage and just sits in this nice little zone hole right here to get you at least 5 yards. Now, one thing you will have to watch out for, though, is if this guy is in man. If you are running this option route where he's cutting inside, of course, you sometimes have to watch out for a user that's keying on that route. Or if you run the hot route one and then you are cutting to the outside, and maybe you have a hard flat over there coming from the safety, then, you know, he could potentially, you know, come in there and mix things up a little bit. So in that case, I had a user, but you see it makes things pretty tight. But now if they're doing that and they're really committing to the outsides, so they have man on everybody and they got curl flats, potentially they're using this guy down low, you do have this post route. Now, Scotty Miller obviously isn't the best route runner, so it's kind of difficult for him to get open here. But he should be able to get inside right here. So if there's no deep safety, he should be able to get inside that corner. So a nice little play if you're coming up against these cover one robber guys. The corner's nice if you don't have a flat over there. You have a number of options with the halfback right here, which is really, really nice. And then of course the post route you're gonna get over the top. If you have slot apprentice, definitely put that over here. It's nice to be able to get that extra option with those in routes. If you have the hot route masters or the apprentices and stuff like that, you can actually get these double moves, which makes it, you know, doesn't work every time, but sometimes it's able to get open against these guys over the top. So that's nice. And then obviously, you know, you can add, you know, posts and things like that, but that's, you know, besides the point. But by and large, you know, you're gonna have a ton of good plays just with the 5-6 trap and the counter. Against zone, FL dig obviously is great. You can have many options to take it over the top, and then a few nice little man routes as well. So I hope you guys like that scheme. I'm having a little bit of fun with it. It's something a little bit different than what I've been running lately. Not so RPO based, but more so just straight up runs and straight up passes off of it. But, you know, like mostly everything, you can have a lot of success on offense in this game as long as you're a little bit smart. And I think this is 5 pretty different plays here that you can work into with some success. Okay, that's it for this one, guys, and I will see you guys in the next one.